I'm delighted to be in my hometown again and with comrades at this important meeting. I think it is an important meeting because post the 26th, where we saw that fabulous turnout from the labour movement and communities right across the country, we have to consolidate on that. We need to build upon it. We need to decide what are the next priorities going forward for this movement. So I'm more than delighted to be here. Barrack is black activists rising against the cuts. We made a shameless plug using the name of the leader of the free world in a blatant attempt to get market recognition for our notably and decidedly decisive campaign, and we make no apologies for that because, of course, Barack Obama, if people know his history, was actually a community organizer on the south side of Chicago, and he was working with Saul Alinsky, and people know the book Rules for Radicals, and he cut his teeth in that area, and so we borrowed his name in order to give us the kind of visibility that we need. I'd like to also offer my congratulations to Colette, because Colette is our coordinator for Barrack in Manchester. Barrack has networks in Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol and elsewhere. And Colette has been our organiser here in Manchester, and I think she's done a tremendous and a fantastic job of pulling together and ensuring that the perspective of black communities in relation to the anti-cuts movement is heard and taken note of. And of course this government would have us believe that there is no alternative to these cuts, and speakers have made mention of it prior to me, but there is an alternative to these cuts, and we know what it is. That is having a progressive taxation system that taxes the very rich. You know, an increase, what was it, of 5% increase on the 2% super rich in this country would pay off our entire debt overnight and allow us not to make any cuts. What this is an ideological battle to destroy your terms and conditions, our terms and conditions, to rip away the gains that we made over the last 30 years in terms of the National Health Service and education. And of course, what they're doing is opening up organisations like the National Health Service to their private sector bodies to come and asset strip the very best of what we've managed to create in this country and sell it off in the hope that these profiteers will make millions and continue to fund this condemned government. And it has no legitimacy. Nobody voted for this condemned government, nobody voted for these policies. And when you look at the unseemingly, hastily rushed, I mean, even in policy terms, these people are making up policy on the hoof. It's as though they were in a sort of Tory right-wing jihad to, you know, to completely decimate the entire working class movement as soon as possible. And they're pushing headlong to do that. And that's why it's important when we need to resist. But in terms of that resistance, the Labour movement has to make sure it brings communities who are not in the Labour movement along with it. You know, I was more than happy with what I saw at the trade union TUC demonstration. I thought it was a fabulous turnout. I thought the numbers exceeded, you know, were underestimated, and it was great. But when I got to Hyde Park, I mean, I didn't go. We're a community organisation, but I didn't go to the back of the demonstration. I led our demonstrations from Brixton, Kennington Park, and when the police told us you've got to go over Embankment Bridge, I said, stop that, we're going over Westminster Bridge. We broke through the police cordons, we went over Westminster Bridge, and we joined the TUC march at the beginning. And the reason why I did that, comrades, because I said if community organisations have got to go to the back, that means black people have got to go to the back, and we've been at the back of the bus too fucking long. And I'm not communities against the cuts, and some youngsters in black and all that sort of thing. Gate crashed the front of the march and got ourselves situated there. So I was fortunate, because when I got to Hyde Park, I saw all the speakers and I heard what they had to say. And I'll tell you, I was mightily inspired, but I was disappointed, comrades, because I didn't hear a trade union, other than one trade unionist, who's Mark Sawalker from the PCS, mention racism. Nobody else mentioned it. Nobody else mentioned the fact that black workers are being, particularly black women, are being disproportionately hit in these public sector cuts. Nobody mentioned the fact that the EDL and the BNP are just salivating at the prospect of being able to scapegoat for our communities for the economic ills and the profligacy of these bankers. So we were disappointed in that extent. And then I looked at the diversity of the march, fabulous diversity. Black people coming, Asian people coming, Latin American community, all of the rich diversity of the labour movement was there, but it wasn't on the platform on the day. We had one black speaker, one Asian woman speaker. And this is the point I'm making, comrades. If this movement is to take everybody with it has to be anti-racist, not just in terms of rhetoric, not just in terms of anti-fascism, but actually dealing with anti-racism. Because I'm getting black trade unionists come to me and saying, cuts in our area, redundancies are massively disproportionate, that we're being victims of racial harassment cases. And when I ask them what they're doing and what their representation in their trade union doing, I have to say, the story that I'm getting back from thousands of them, and I do mean thousands of them, is that they're not being adequately represented by the trade union movement when they're facing racism in the workplace. Now, this is a profoundly difficult topic to raise, and I've raised it in public with the TUC and with trade unions, because I think if the labour movement is worth anything, then it has to prioritise increasing black representation in the trade union movement and skilling up shop stewards that they can adequately understand the complexities, and it is complex, I grant you that, of race equality legislation, so that when black workers face racism in the workplace, they can be adequately defended. And that is not the case now. I just come from the TUC Black Workers Conference. People are saying that huge disproportionality. One government department with 12% ethnic minorities makes up 50% of the redundancies. Those ethnic minorities make up 50% of those redundancies that are being announced. And I don't see trade unions saying, well, we're going to challenge our employers under the Equality Impact Assessment and 2010 Equality Act to say, we're going to stop that disproportionality. You know, my black workers and black workers that I meet are saying to me is as though that people are happy with that kind of disproportionality. I'm trying to convince them that is not the case, but we've got to see some proper anti-racist leadership from the trade union movement to extend beyond that its usual constituency. Because both black and white poor communities out there, in places like the estates on Withenshaw, in places like that gentleman talked about on Rochdale, on those council estates, they've never been in the labour movement. They've never been in employment for any great length of time. And these are the people who are going to be massively affected by these cuts. We're looking at communities in Moss Side and Newcastle and Scotland, and Billy will know because he's from Liverpool, who are going to be pushed into the social abyss by these cuts. The Sure Start cuts, the education stuff. How are we now going to motivate young people, right, to get an education and go into the world of work when they can't afford to go to college and can't afford to go to university? We know what happens to young people, we know what happens to communities in general, where people have no vision, no hope for the future. Therein lies chaos. And we've got a group of people and whole sections of our communities who've been disconnected from the world of work, disconnected from the labour movement, but it will make up millions of people who are going to be brutally affected by these public sector cuts. So the challenge is very great going forward. Because I can tell you, we're already seeing rises in racism. What do I mean by that? Well, stop and search has gone up in the last 5 years on black communities nationwide by 70%. 70% in 5 years it's gone up. And we know that when unemployment rises and crime begins to rise as a consequence, and it's a natural fact as far as I'm concerned, the greater degree of enforced poverty you put on a community, then the more of that you're going to see. But as that begins to rise and the police begin to take ever more radical action to try and deal with it, it will be young black people, young white working class people on those estates who are going to feel the brunt of that policing, the brunt of that kind of oppression. And I'll give you some statistics. For every 1,000 white people in the United Kingdom, 1.24 are in jail. For every Asian person and this is with the attacks on Muslim communities, for every 1,000 Asian people in the United Kingdom, there are 2.4 Asians in prison. For every 1,000 person of African and Caribbean descent, there are 7 black
people in jail. That's the huge disproportionality that these communities are facing, which will be magnified by this racism. And that's what I'm saying. Yes, we are all in the same boat. That's the absolute truth. But it'll be these communities who are not in work, who are not in employment, who don't have access to those resources, who are going to feel a great magnification of these cuts localised to them in those areas. And it's those communities that we're going to have to bring together and move together. If you know anything about the black community at the moment, then you'll know that I had a meeting in Brixton just 2 weeks ago about the death of Smiley Culture. It's a popular musical combo, my lord. It's, Smiley Culture is a reggae artist. 2,000 people turned up to that meeting. 2,000 people to an ordinary community meeting about a death in custody. 2 weeks later, it was followed by the death in custody, police custody of Kingsley Burrell in Birmingham. We had a meeting in there in Birmingham last week. Again, 1,000 people turned up spontaneously to that meeting. So our people are mobilising, getting themselves ready to fight injustice. And it's absolutely imperative that the link is made between the labour movement and the wider community. And we can't ignore stuff and sweep it under the carpet and wish it didn't happen. I think we've got a lot to do internally in order to make sure this movement is fully anti-racist and fully respected of all the communities.
Moving to civil disobedience. This is an all-out ideological movement. Why the hell are we trying to fight this with one hand behind our back? We can't take in our nurseries. Let's take over the nurseries. If they take away your lollipop ladies, I've already told my local authority, no uncertain term. If you stop if you sack our lollipop ladies, we will shut that road every morning between 8:30 and 9. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to stop trying to play it by their neoliberal classical rules. We're not in that. We need a general strike, Billy. The TUC needs to be liberated to get to that position. And get to that position quickly, because the cost for us will be great indeed. And we'll spend the next 50 or 60 years trying to recover our position if we don't get that kind of radical action now. So there is a way forward. There is a way forward. And people talked about the TUC march and the violence of about 500, 600, maybe even 1,000 kids who were running around frustrated and taking it out. And I condemn all sorts of violence. But I'll tell you what I condemn more, the economic violence that will leave our communities decimated and create more violence. That's what the violence that I condemn. I condemn the violence of the government who's got no mandate and is seeking to line the pockets of the filthy rich, taking bread out the mouths of poor people in order to feed the rich bankers. That's the kind of violence that I'm interested in condemning out there. And so civil disobedience and occupations are the way. General strike is definitely. On the 5th of May, I am praying and praying that we decapitate the Liberal Democratic Party in the local elections, and that we push the Tory party right down to its racist core vote. But of course, you know what they're doing? They're rearranging your political boundaries. They're putting housing benefit legislation in place to bring back a Dame Shirley Porter sort of social reorganisation of the inner cities. I've got 5,000 black families in my area alone in Lambeth that are being moved out, properties that live in 15 to 20 years because they're £2–3 over the limit. On a housing sector that was deregulated by the Tories, who allowed landlords to put up their rates, and now poor people forced to live in those properties because of a lack of council housing are now being punished and have to move out. So I say the 5th of May is important. I think the comrade mentioned there, the 30th of June, absolutely right, completely agree with you on that. But comrades, I want to repeat this because I'm going to become a thorn in the side, a critical friend, if you like, of the TUC and the labour movement of this one, right? Because it's easy to turn up when the EDL boneheads are running around town and face them off. It has to be done, and I give that 100 support. But you know where the volume business, the volume end of racism is? It's in the everyday racism faced by black workers in their workplace. And that has to have an equal priority as the sexy anti-fascist end. As important as that is, it can't be discounted. It can't be ignored. I stand and, you know, as a way forward, I think there is great hope for our movement if we learn the lessons of our past. We are a community in this country. We are a labour movement and communities who've done great and historic things in the past, and they're capable of doing even greater things in the future. But the one thing we must have, comrades, is unity. Unity within the labour movement, unity between the labour movement and all of the sections of this anti-cuts movement, and unity between all of those organisations. If we get this, comrades, we can push the Tories and Liberal Democrats right off the cliffs of Dover into the political abyss and the history books of this country. And I know we can do that. Thank you very much.